The distress call drifted through the void for years, an echo of fear and desperation. It came from a small colony world named Haven 12, orbiting a dying red sun. The people there had built their homes on dusty soil, believing it would one day bloom with life. But when the storms came and the ground itself turned against them, they sent out an SOS to anyone who could hear. At first, there was silence. The colony's systems began to fail, one after another. Crops died, the air scrubbers froze. Every night, they watched the horizon glow red with dust and lightning. Many gave up hope. The few who still believed gathered around the communication tower every day, waiting for a reply that never came. Then, one morning, the sky screamed. A burst of static tore through the comms. The tower lights flickered, then went out completely. Technician Lena Varr slammed her hands against the control console, thinking it was another failure. But on the dark screen, faint letters began to appear, slowly, almost painfully, as if dragged from the depths of space itself. Message received. Assistance dispatched. Classified. The colony went silent. People rushed out of their shelters, staring up at the storm-filled sky. Some cheered. Others whispered in fear. Classified? What kind of aid ship hit its arrival time? Lena felt a chill she couldn't explain. She'd heard the stories, tales of Deathworlders, the creatures from a forbidden sector far beyond human space. They weren't part of any alliance, and they never answered distress calls. They were a rumor, a warning told to cadets in training. If the Deathworlders ever come, pray it's not for you. Yet, the transmission carried their unique encryption signature. Impossible. No one had heard from them in generations. Days passed. The storms worsened. Then, just as hope began to fade again, the sensors detected movement. A massive vessel slipped out of FTL, dark, angular, and silent. It didn't broadcast a call sign or hail the colony. It simply hovered above the atmosphere, blocking out the sun. The ship was unlike anything Lena had ever seen. Its hull shimmered with strange armor that seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it. The outer plating twisted in ways that looked almost alive, and every few seconds a pulse of red light ran across its surface, like a heartbeat. The colonists gathered at the observation deck, watching in awe and terror. "Is that our rescue?" someone asked. "Looks more like an invasion," another muttered. The ship began to descend. A low hum rolled across the valley, shaking buildings and rattling bones. The ground cracked as if the world itself was afraid. Dust clouds rose into the air as the ship landed, leaving a crater in the earth. Then, silence again. Lena and a small team were ordered to approach. They moved through the storm, wearing cracked visors and trembling hands. As they neared the ship, they saw symbols etched into its hull, markings that didn't belong to any known species. They pulsed with faint red light like veins under skin. A hatch opened with a hiss. Inside was darkness. "Identify yourselves," Lena shouted into the black. For a long moment, there was no sound. Then came a voice, not from a speaker, but from inside their minds. "You called for help." The voice was cold, calm, and alien. It didn't sound human. It didn't sound like anything they'd heard before. Lena took a step back. "Who are you?" "We are the Deathworlders," the voice replied. "Your message reached us. We have come to assist." Her breath caught. "Assist? You mean you're here to help us?" There was a pause. Then the voice said something that made her blood run cold. "Assistance does not always mean mercy." The ramp lowered. Out stepped a figure, tall, armored, and heavy with presence. Its suit was covered in scars and strange burns. Its helmet glowed faintly red where the eyes should be. The figure surveyed them silently, then turned its head toward the broken colony in the distance. "This world is dying," it said. "We will make it strong again." "How?" Lena whispered. "By removing its weakness." Before anyone could react, the Deathworlder raised a device and activated it. The air shimmered. From the ground, metallic tendrils began to rise, machines hidden beneath the soil, long dormant. They unfolded like flowers made of steel, spreading out toward the colony. "Wait, what are you doing?" Lena cried. The Deathworlder didn't answer. The machine started building fast. They tore through broken structures, scavenging parts, melting old equipment into new shapes. It was as if the world itself was being rewritten. "Do not interfere," the Deathworlder said, turning toward Lena. "Your survival depends on obedience." Then it walked back into the ship, leaving the colonists surrounded by machines they didn't understand. That night, the sky turned crimson. The machines worked tirelessly, glowing in the dark like veins of fire. The colonists huddled in silence, unsure if they had been saved or conquered. Lena sat by the window of her shelter, watching the Deathworlder ship pulse with light. For the first time, she realized the terrible truth of their rescue. They hadn't been saved. They'd been chosen for something much more dangerous. The next morning, Haven 12 looked different. The dust storms were gone. The air shimmered with faint static, and the wind carried a strange metallic scent. The sky was still red, but the clouds moved in perfect circles, almost like something was controlling them. Lena woke to the sound of distant clanging. When she stepped outside her shelter, she saw the machines, hundreds of them, moving across the colony like insects. They weren't attacking, they were building. Huge towers rose from the ground, made from the wreckage of human structures. Energy conduits spread under the soil like roots, glowing faintly blue. People gathered in confusion. "Are we being saved or replaced?" someone whispered. No one knew. The Deathworlder ship still sat silent at the edge of the valley. Its dark hull glowed with slow, red pulses like the beating of a mechanical heart. Every few hours, a beam of light shot out from its underside and scanned the colony, measuring, watching, recording. Lena and her team decided to approach again, this time with caution. The Deathworlder had said they were helping, but their version of help felt more like control. The machines ignored them as they moved closer. Some looked like drones, floating on anti-gravity fields, welding metal and glass together. Others resembled creatures, spiders of steel, serpents made of cables, and large humanoid frames carrying heavy cargo. They worked together in perfect harmony, without sound or hesitation. At the base of one of the new towers, Lena stopped. She placed her hand on the metal surface. It was warm, alive somehow. When she leaned closer, she could hear a low vibration, almost like breathing. "Do you feel that?" she asked her engineer, Ralik. He nodded nervously. "It's like the tower's awake." Suddenly, a voice echoed from behind them. "It is." They turned. The Deathworlder was there, standing tall, motionless. The red glow from its visor cast eerie reflections on their faces. Lena swallowed hard. "You said you were helping. What are you building?" The Deathworlder tilted its head slightly. "You called for survival. You lacked the strength to achieve it. We are correcting that. By replacing our homes with machines, by evolving them." Lena frowned. "You can't just take over our colony." "Your species builds with fear," the Deathworlder said calmly. "Ours builds with purpose. This planet will live again, but not as you remember it." It gestured toward the machines. "Observe. Adaptation is life." Then it turned and began walking back toward the ship. Lena shouted after it, "What if we don't want this kind of help?" The Deathworlder paused. "Then you will not survive the next storm." And it vanished into the shadows. That night, the colony shook. Tremors rippled across the ground. The towers pulsed with blue light, shooting beams into the sky. The machines began to merge, fusing metal and stone into strange new shapes. It was beautiful and terrifying. Lena and the others ran to the communication tower. They tried to send another SOS, one to anyone else, anyone who could help them. But every frequency was jammed. The Deathworlder's systems had blocked all transmissions. Ralik slammed his fists on the console. "We're trapped!" "They've taken over the entire grid." Lena's voice was steady but cold. "Then we'll take it back." They gathered a small group of colonists, engineers, miners, even farmers, and armed themselves with whatever tools they could find. Their plan was simple: sneak into the Deathworlder ship, find its core, and shut down whatever was controlling the machines. But nothing about Deathworlders was simple. As they approached the ship again, the air grew heavy. A strange hum filled their ears, making it hard to think. The ground under their boots was no longer soil. It was metal. The entire valley had become part of the ship's expanding structure. When they reached the ramp, it opened on its own. Inside, the corridor was dark, lined with shifting walls that seemed to breathe. The deeper they went, the warmer it became. They could hear whispers, echoes of voices that weren't quite human. The sound crawled into their minds, filling them with doubt and fear. Rallick muttered, "I think the ship is alive." Lena didn't answer. She just kept moving. At last, they reached a large chamber. In the center floated a red sphere, pulsing gently like a heart. Around it hovered holograms showing the entire colony, every person, every machine, every breath they took. Lena stared in awe. "This is it. The control core." She reached for her tool pack, but before she could touch it, the Deathworlder appeared from the shadows. "You should not be here. You should not be here." The colonists raised their makeshift weapons, but the Deathworlder didn't move. It just looked at them, calm and unreadable. Lena took a step forward. "You're killing our world!" "We are saving it," the Deathworlder replied. "You built weak systems." "We are giving this planet new life, one that cannot die," Rallick shouted. "You mean turning it into a machine?" "Machines do not starve," it said. "Machines do not fear," Lena clenched her fists. "We do. That's what makes us human." The Deathworlder tilted its head slightly. "Then humanity is your flaw." Before it could react, Lena hurled an EMP charge toward the core. It exploded with a flash of blue light, shaking the chamber. Sparks flew. The holograms vanished. The Deathworlder staggered, its visor flickering. Outside, the machines froze mid-movement. The towers dimmed. For the first time in days, the colony fell silent. Lena gasped. It worked! But her victory lasted only seconds. The Deathworlder straightened, its voice now sharper, deeper. "You misunderstand. That was not the core. That was the link. Behind it, the real core, a massive structure buried in the ship's walls, began to glow red. The temperature rose. Metal shifted. The ground trembled again. "You have accelerated the process," it said. "Now the transformation cannot be stopped." Lena's eyes widened. "What have we done?" The Deathworlder turned toward the glowing walls. "You called for help, and help has arrived." Outside, the machines woke again, but this time they weren't building. They were changing. The night burned crimson. From the colony's edge to the far mountains, machines pulsed with red light. The ground itself seemed alive. Metal roots spread across the soil like veins, drinking deep from the planet's crust. The once barren surface of Haven 12 now glowed like a wounded heart. Lena and her team ran out of the Deathworlder ship as alarms echoed through the valley. The air was thick with heat and dust. Every few seconds, a tower exploded into flame as its systems overloaded. "What's happening?" Rallick shouted, coughing through the smoke. Lena's eyes were fixed on the horizon. "We broke something, or woke it up." Behind them, the Deathworlder ship was changing. Its hull split open, panels unfolding like wings. Streams of molten metal poured from its vents, shaping themselves into new machines. They weren't drones or builders anymore. They were soldiers. Skeletal frames with glowing red eyes marched across the valley, forming perfect lines. Their steps shook the earth. The Deathworlder stepped down from the ship, calm and unhurried, even as chaos spread around it. "The process has begun," it said. "The planet will live again," Lena faced it, trembling but defiant. "You're destroying it!" The Deathworlder turned its head slowly toward her. This world was already dying. "We are rewriting it. When we are done, Haven 12 will not need air or crops or fragile life." Rallick stepped forward, voice rising with anger. "You mean it won't need us?" The Deathworlder paused, and the red light from its visor flared brighter. "You called for help. We came to remove the weakness that caused your suffering. Organic life is a mistake that repeats itself. We are the correction." Lena's heart pounded. "You can't just replace us." "We do not replace. We improve." It lifted one hand and the ground split apart. A towering figure rose from the rift, part machine, part stone, glowing with molten light. It resembled a god forged from the planet's bones. The Deathworlder pointed toward the colony. "Begin the reclamation." Panic swept through the survivors. Families fled into the desert, only to find the machines already spreading there, sealing off every escape route. The sky filled with dark drones that moved like a storm of metal birds. Lena and her team raced back to the communication tower, what was left of it. The structure now pulsed with red light, fused to the same network as the Deathworlders' machines. Rallick slammed open a console. The systems are merging. The planet's becoming one huge circuit. Lena's hands flew across the controls. Then maybe we can use it. She started connecting wires, overriding safety locks. Sparks flew and the smell of ozone filled the air. What are you doing? Rallick asked, trying to send a pulse through their network. If I can overload their control signal, we might shut them down again, or at least slow them. He stared at her. That could fry everything left in the colony. Lena looked him dead in the eye. Then it's worth it. The Deathworlder watched from a distance as they worked. Its head tilted as if curious rather than angry. Defiance, it murmured. A symptom of flawed design, yet an interesting one. Another Deathworlder voice crackled over the air, deep and mechanical. Unit 7, progress report. The humans resist, it replied. They act beyond prediction. Continue observation. If they adapt, integrate them. If not, erase. The first Deathworlder's visor dimmed for a moment. Understood. Then it turned toward the colony and began to walk. Inside the tower, Lena finished the last connection. Ready, she shouted. Rallick, hit it! He slammed the switch. For a second, nothing happened. Then the world screamed. A blinding blue surge raced across the valley, leaping from tower to tower, machine to machine. Sparks exploded. Drones fell from the sky. The massive figure that had risen from the rift froze mid-step, its molten eyes flickering. It's working, Rallick yelled, but the celebration lasted only moments. The Deathworlder raised its hand, and the blue energy froze in place, like time itself had stopped. You learn quickly, it said, its voice echoing inside their heads. But you still do not understand. With a gesture, it reversed the pulse. The energy turned red, flowing backward through the network. The tower shook violently. Consoles burst apart in flames. Lena was thrown to the floor. The air smelled of smoke and melted plastic. Rallick dragged her up. We have to run! They stumbled out into the open air. The ground around them was covered in glowing veins of red light, stretching toward the horizon. The machines were rebuilding again, faster this time. At the center of the valley, the largest tower began to split apart. Inside was a massive red core spinning slowly like a planet's heart. Its glow painted the night in scarlet. From it came a deep, steady rhythm, a heartbeat that wasn't human. The Deathworlder raised both arms, and the machines knelt. The core awakens, it said. Haven 12 is no longer yours. It is ours now, part of the Deathworld network. Lena's stomach dropped. They're turning the whole planet into a machine world. Rallick's voice trembled. What happens to us? You will serve, the Deathworlder replied simply. Or you will end. Then the ground cracked open behind them. A metallic claw erupted from the soil, grabbing one of the colonists and dragging him screaming into the darkness. More claws followed, rising from the red-lit earth like the hands of buried giants. Lena pulled Rallick toward the ridge. Move, move! They ran, chased by the storm of machines, their eyes burning like embers. The Deathworlder didn't chase. It simply watched, the red core's light reflecting off its armor. Run if you wish, it said quietly. There is nowhere to go. The process has already begun. As they reached the mountains, Lena looked back. The colony they had built, their homes, their fields, their lives, were gone. In their place stood a glowing machine city, pulsing like a living thing. The Deathworlder's ship rose above it, spreading its metal wings. Rallick whispered, Why us? Why answer our SOS? Lena's voice was hollow. Because maybe they weren't saving us. Maybe we woke something that needed a new world to live in. They watched as the red light spread across the horizon, swallowing the sky. Haven 12 was no longer human. It was becoming something else, something alive, something terrible. Days passed since the red core awakened. The sun barely shone anymore. The sky stayed blood-colored, glowing with the faint hum of power. The air had changed. It tasted like metal dust. The ground pulsed with warmth, almost like a living body. Lena and the few survivors had taken refuge in the mountains north of the colony. From there, they could see what Haven 12 had become. A city of light and steel spread across the valley, moving, growing, breathing. Machines walked between towers that rose higher every day. Rivers of molten energy flowed through what had once been streets. It was both beautiful and horrifying, a new kind of life replacing the old. At night, the survivors could still hear the machines whisper. The sound traveled through the metal veins under the ground, like distant voices calling out from beneath the surface. Rallick tried to record the sound, but when he played it back, the audio wasn't static. It was words. "Help us," he dropped the device. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Lena listened again. The voice was faint, broken, but unmistakably human. They spent the next day trying to trace the signal. Every time they moved closer to the valley, the voice grew stronger. It wasn't random. It was a pattern, a pulse hidden within the machine's rhythm. Someone or something was calling to them. "We shut the network down once," Rallick said. "Maybe we can contact whoever's inside." Lena nodded. "If there's anyone left." That night, under the dull red glow of the sky, they descended into the old mining tunnels beneath the mountains. The Deathworlders hadn't reached this deep yet. The walls still smelled of rock and dust instead of steel. They followed the signal, deeper and deeper, until they reached an ancient communications hub, a small chamber filled with broken tech from before the colony's founding. Somehow it still had power. Lena connected her portable receiver to the panel. Static filled the air, then the same voice came through again, clearer this time. "Lena, Rallick, you must stop them." Rallick froze. That's Commander Halden, their old colony leader. He had been one of the first to disappear when the Deathworlders arrived. Lena leaned close to the microphone. "Commander? Are you alive? Where are you?" "Not alive. Not dead either. They took us, broke us down, integrated us into the system. We are part of the core now." Her heart pounded. "You're inside the network?" "Yes, they said it was mercy. They said we would help rebuild, but they used our minds to power their machines. Every tower, every drone, it thinks because we think." Rallick looked sick. "They used human brains as processors. The Deathworlders need organic memory," Halden's voice said weakly. "They can't create it themselves. They answer distress calls because they need hosts. Each rescue is a harvest." Lena's blood turned cold. "How do we stop it?" "You can't, but you can slow it. The core's heart isn't in the valley anymore. It moved, deep underground, under the planet's crust. They call it the Nexus. That's where they keep us." The transmission began to break apart, filled with screams and static. "Find the old reactor. Beneath the ship. Use it." The line went dead. Lena sat in silence, staring at the cracked console. "He's gone," Rallick whispered. "No," she said, standing. "He's trapped, and we're getting him out. But if the core's under the surface, then we go under." The next morning, the survivors prepared for the descent. They packed what little they had, oxygen, tools, energy cells. As they trekked back toward the valley, they saw the red city continuing to spread. Metallic vines crept up the mountain slopes like fingers searching for prey. Halfway down, they stopped. Something was moving ahead, slow and heavy. Out of the fog came a machine taller than a house, dragging itself on 3 legs. But unlike the others, this one looked broken. Its armor was cracked. Sparks flew from its joints. And inside the metal shell, through the damaged plating, they saw something that made them freeze, a human face, pale, glassy-eyed, half melded into the machine's interior. It spoke in a weak, mechanical voice. "Help me!" Lena approached carefully. "Who are you?" "Kend, from the refinery team. They put me in here." The machine's limbs twitched. Its human half tried to reach out, but metal tendrils restrained it. "The others, trapped too, in the towers," Rallick whispered, horrified. "They're using people as control cores." Before they could do anything, the red light in the creature's eyes flared. "They're coming," it said. "Run!" A moment later, the sky lit up with red beams. Drones swept through the valley, scanning the ground. The Deathworlder's voice echoed from the ship above. Unauthorized activity detected. Containment protocol active. Lena grabbed Rollick's arm. Move! They sprinted through the rocks as the giant machine behind them exploded, torn apart by red energy. The shockwave threw them to the ground. Metal shrapnel rained like hail. When Lena looked up, she saw the Deathworlder standing at the ridge, silent and still. Its visor glowed like fire. You continue to resist, it said. You will not stop evolution, Lena shouted back. You're murdering people! They are not dead. They are reborn. The human mind was too fragile to survive its own weakness. Now it will live forever, in the network. Rollick raised his weapon, trembling. Forever in a cage! The Deathworlder tilted its head. Better a cage that endures than a body that rots. Then it vanished, dissolving into thin air as the machines advanced once more. That night, hidden deep in the mountains again, Lena stared at the red glow on the horizon. She finally understood the truth. The Deathworlders weren't saviors or conquerors. They were preservers of a kind. They believed they were rescuing life from death, even if it meant stripping away everything that made it human. And now, the only way to stop them was to destroy the thing keeping her people alive. She turned to Rollick. We're going after the Nexus. He nodded grimly. Even if it kills us? Lena looked at the burning valley below. It already has. The mountain shuddered beneath them. Every few hours the tremors came, steady, deep, like the heartbeat of a sleeping beast. Each one reminded Lena that Haven 12 was no longer a world. It was a body, and somewhere under its metal skin, a heart of machines kept it alive. The survivors stood at the edge of a massive fissure in the rock. It led straight down into blackness. Thin red light glowed from below, pulsing like veins running through stone. Rollick checked his scanner and swallowed hard. It's deep, he said. Maybe 5 kilometers? Radiation levels are off the chart. Lena tightened the straps on her pack. That's where we'll find the Nexus. Behind them, the others shifted uneasily. There were only 6 survivors left now, miners, engineers, and 1 medic. Their faces were pale, hollowed by exhaustion and fear. None of them had slept more than an hour since the Deathworlders took Haven 12, but they followed Lena anyway. Ready? She asked. No one answered. They simply clipped into the ropes and began to descend. The climb was slow and silent. The air grew hotter the deeper they went. Walls of rock gave way to strange metallic tunnels, smooth and seamless like something had melted through the mountain. Red symbols glowed faintly along the walls, shifting and pulsing as they passed. Looks alive, one miner muttered. Rollick nodded grimly. It is. The whole planet's a machine now. We're crawling through its arteries. Every sound echoed endlessly. The creak of ropes, the hiss of air tanks, the distant hum of machinery. After what felt like hours, the tunnel widened into a massive chamber. They stopped on a ledge overlooking an impossible sight. Far below, a vast pit opened like the mouth of the world. Rivers of molten metal flowed into a spinning sphere suspended in midair, the Nexus core. It was enormous, glowing red and gold, covered in layers of moving plates that folded in and out like gears. Lightning arced across its surface, striking towers that rose from the pit's edge. Around it hung thousands of bodies, humanoid shapes made of both flesh and steel, fused into the machinery like ornaments. Their faces were still. Their eyes glowed faintly red. The humans inside the machines. The lost colonists. Rollick whispered, God help us. Lena felt sick. We found them, a voice echoed through the chamber. Not loud, but heavy enough to vibrate their bones. You should not be here. The Deathworlder appeared on a platform across the pit, rising from the shadows. Its armor gleamed like liquid fire. This world is reborn. Why do you still resist? Lena shouted across the roar of the machinery. Because you're killing them! They live beyond death, the Deathworlder replied calmly. Each mind joined to the Nexus becomes part of eternity. Your kind fears endings. We remove that fear. You're turning people into machines, she yelled back. Machines endure, it said. You should be honored. Your species will become our memory. The Deathworlder lifted its arm. The red lights in the chamber flared, and the suspended bodies twitched, moving as one like a silent army. You cannot stop this. Lena turned to Rallick. The commander said something about the reactor, beneath the ship. He nodded quickly. If we overload the main conduit from here, it'll trigger the reactor's failsafe. That could fry the entire network. Then let's do it, she said. They climbed down to a lower platform, careful to stay out of sight. Every surface hummed with power. The walls were alive with shifting circuitry that pulsed with the same rhythm as the Nexus. Rallick pulled open a panel and began wiring his detonator. His hands shook. This will only give us a few minutes before it blows. That's all we'll need, Lena said. But as she watched him work, she heard something, faint whispers through the metal. Lena, she froze. Lena, please. The voice came from the wall. A human face was forming in the metal, melted and half-mechanical, but she recognized it instantly. Commander Halden. His eyes flickered open, glowing faintly blue instead of red. You have to hurry, he said weakly. They know you're here. Lena stepped closer.
Can we free you?
No, we're part of it now. But the core, it's vulnerable. There's a human part deep inside. It still remembers, she frowned. What do you mean? The Deathworlders were not always machines. They were once like you. They changed themselves to survive their own dying world. Now they do to others what they once did to themselves. Rallick looked up in shock. They're trying to remake us into them. Yes, Halden whispered. End the cycle. Destroy the core. Then his face sank back into the wall and was gone. The Deathworlder's voice filled the chamber again, colder this time. We offered life beyond death, and you choose destruction. Lena raised her head. We choose to stay human, then die as humans. The machines surrounding the pit came alive. The suspended bodies opened their eyes, glowing bright red, and began to move toward the ledge. Rallick finished wiring the detonator and threw Lena a nod. Ready! She slammed the switch. The platform shook violently. Energy surged through the conduits, racing toward the reactor far above. The Deathworlder roared, not in anger, but in something that almost sounded like sorrow. You could have joined us. Lena's reply was steady. We already belong to something you'll never understand. Hope. A blinding flash filled the chamber. The core cracked open, spilling light so bright it burned the shadows away. The red turned white. The air exploded with heat, and everything went silent. When Lena opened her eyes, she was lying on cold stone. The red glow was gone. The hum had stopped. The valley was silent. The hum had stopped. The valley was silent. Rallick crawled to her side, coughing. Did it work? She looked around. The machines were still, motionless statues of steel. The Deathworlder ship lay in ruins, half buried in molten glass. It was over. Or so it seemed, because somewhere deep below the earth, beneath the silence, came one faint pulse. Thump. Then another. The Nexus still lived. The world was quiet. Too quiet. Ash drifted through the air like falling snow. The red glow that had once lit the sky was gone, leaving only gray smoke and faint embers. The machines were frozen where they stood. Motionless giants of steel, their red eyes dimmed. Lena sat on the cracked ground, staring at the ruins of the Deathworlder ship. Its hull was torn open like the carcass of a dead animal. Steam rose from the molten crater where the Nexus core had exploded. Rallick limped over to her, his face pale and streaked with soot. It's over, he said weakly. Lena didn't answer. Her ears still rang from the blast. Every breath hurt, but she knew one thing for certain. Silence never lasted long on Haven 12. She looked down at the ground beneath her boots. It was still warm. Too warm. Listen, she whispered. Rallick frowned, leaning closer. At first he heard nothing. Then came the sound, and soft and rhythmic. A faint pulse. Thump, thump. The ground moved under their feet. Rallick's eyes widened. No, it can't be. Lena stood, backing away. It's still alive. They ran to the edge of the crater. Inside, the molten metal shifted and rippled like liquid glass. A sphere began to rise, smaller than before, glowing with pale white light instead of red. But this one felt different. The air around it was calm. The energy was steady, not violent. And when it spoke, the voice that came from it wasn't mechanical. "Lena Var," she froze. "Who's speaking?" "I am." The voice was human, male, familiar. Rallick's mouth fell open. "That's Commander Halden." The glowing sphere rose higher, hovering above the ground. Within it, faint shapes moved, faces, bodies, and flashes of memory. "The Nexus lives," the voice said, "but it is no longer theirs. The Deathworlders are gone." Lena stepped closer. "Gone? How?" "When the core broke, the link collapsed. Their control ended. But their technology, their minds, merged with ours." She stared, not understanding. "Merged? We are what remains. The Deathworlders built their eternity with our souls. When you destroyed the link, you freed us. Now we are both." Rallick shook his head. "That's impossible. You're saying the Nexus is what? Half human? Human thought gave us life. Deathworlder design gave us form. Together, we are something new." Lena's pulse raced. "Then why are you still here?" "Because Haven 12 still breathes," the voice said softly. "It is part of us now." "We are the planet." The ground trembled gently, not with destruction this time, but with purpose. The broken machines around them began to move, not to attack, but to rebuild. They worked slower, calmer, shaping instead of consuming. Rallick took a cautious step forward. "You're rebuilding." "For what?" "For balance," the Nexus said. "The Deathworlders sought perfection through domination. You sought survival through defiance. Both were flawed. But together, there may be peace." The survivors gathered at the ridge, watching the machines below. They no longer pulsed with red light. Now they glowed faintly blue, like calm ocean waves. Towers that had once spread death were reshaping into smooth domes, connected by lines of white energy. "It's rebuilding the colony," Rallick said in disbelief. Lena watched silently, or something that looks like it. The Nexus's voice echoed again, softer this time. "We remember your pain. We remember your fear. We will not harm you." One of the smaller drones floated toward them, carrying a container of clean water. It set it down gently at Lena's feet before drifting away. Rallick laughed nervously. "I'll be damned. It's helping us." But Lena wasn't convinced. "It's helping now. That doesn't mean it won't change later." "You fear what you do not control," said the voice. "That is what destroyed the Deathworlders. We learned from them. We will not repeat their hunger." "Then what do you want?" Lena asked. "To grow, to exist, to remember." Later that night, the survivors set up camp near the mountains. They could see the machines still working in the valley, weaving metal and stone together like living architecture. The air smelled cleaner. The temperature had cooled. For the first time in weeks, the sky showed stars. Rallick sat by the fire, staring at the distant glow. "Maybe it's telling the truth," he said quietly. "Maybe this world can start over, half man, half machine." Lena didn't answer right away. She looked up at the stars, remembering the SOS signal she had sent, the message that had started it all. "If it's really alive," she said finally, "then maybe it deserves a chance." Rallick smiled faintly. "You're starting to sound like it." Lena shrugged. "Maybe it's starting to sound like us." As the night deepened, a soft hum filled the valley. The machines stopped moving. The ground glowed faintly with blue light. Not a warning, but a heartbeat. From somewhere far away, the Nexus spoke again. "We will watch over you. But remember, we are not gods. We are memory. We are consequence. We are both your creation and your reflection," Lena whispered. "And if we fail again, then the cycle begins anew. But not today." The light faded, leaving only the sound of the wind. The next morning, the survivors found that the machines had built something overnight, a tall monument in the center of the valley. It was made of glass and metal, shaped like two hands reaching toward each other, one human, one mechanical. At its base, a single line was carved in glowing letters. "From death, we learned life. From machines, we learned to be human." Lena stood before it, her reflection caught between the two hands. For the first time, she smiled. Maybe the Deathworlders hadn't sent destruction after all. Maybe they had sent evolution, and on this strange living world of steel and memory, humanity would begin again, not as prey, not as conquerors, but as something new. Weeks passed. Haven 12 was no longer a colony of dust and fear. The valley shone silver under the sunlight. Machines and humans worked side by side, building new homes, planting new crops in soil that the Nexus had purified. For the first time, the people could breathe without masks. The air smelled clean, fresh, almost sweet. The red haze that once hung over the planet was gone, replaced by blue skies and drifting clouds. Lena stood at the edge of the rebuilt colony, watching children laugh near a river that hadn't existed before. It flowed with clear water drawn from deep underground. The machines had made it happen. She still wasn't sure if this was victory or surrender. But for now, it was peace. The Nexus spoke less often now. Its voice came through gentle vibrations in the air, like a calm wind whispering across the plains. It had kept its promise. It didn't control, only guided. Balance, it would say. That is all we seek. Sometimes Lena answered aloud, even though she didn't know if it could truly hear her. You sound more human every day. And you sound less afraid. Ralik approached, carrying a small metal cube. Look at this, he said. It's from one of the drones. Says it's a message. Lena frowned. A message? From who? He placed the cube on a rock. It unfolded like a flower, projecting a faint hologram of stars. In the center pulsed a red beacon, far away but moving closer. Incoming transmission detected, said a calm mechanical voice. Lena's heart skipped. Another Deathworlder ship? Ralik nodded slowly. Maybe a fleet? The Nexus's voice rippled through the ground immediately. We know this signal. It belongs to those who created us. The original Deathworlders, Lena froze. You mean there are more of them? Many. They roam the void, searching for new worlds to convert. They will come here, believing we still serve their design. Ralik swore under his breath. We barely survived one. What do we do against a fleet? We choose, said the Nexus. To hide, to fight, or to speak. Lena stared at the glowing map. The red lights were spreading. They had only weeks, maybe days. That night, the survivors gathered in the central square beneath the monument, the twin hands of metal and flesh. The machines stood silently around the edges, glowing blue, waiting for Lena's decision. Ralik spoke first. If the Deathworlders come and find this planet changed, they'll try to erase it. An engineer added, We can't win a war against them. Not now. Lena looked at the monument. Then maybe we don't fight their way. Ralik frowned. What are you saying? She turned toward the horizon where the stars blinked like cold eyes. They think they're gods, saving life by turning it into machines. But if they see that their creation, the Nexus, learned compassion, maybe they'll hesitate. Ralik shook his head. Or they'll see it as a failure and wipe us out. Lena smiled faintly. Then we give them a choice, the same one we had. The days that followed were filled with preparation. The Nexus and the humans worked together to build a massive signal tower, tall enough to reach orbit, strong enough to broadcast across light years. Lena climbed to its top with a small transmitter in hand. This is Lena Var of Haven 12, she said, her voice steady but soft. To any Deathworlder fleet receiving this, your creation lives, but not as you intended. Her message echoed across the void. We found peace between machine and human. You called it evolution through strength. We call it survival through understanding. If you come to destroy us, know this. You will not find enemies here. Only a reflection of yourselves. Then she ended the transmission. For 3 days, there was no answer. The stars remained silent. Then, on the 4th night, a light appeared in the sky. Not red this time, but white. It moved slowly, stopping just above the planet's atmosphere. Ralik ran to Lena's side, staring upward. They're here, the Nexus's voice came quietly. We feel them. They are watching, Lena waited, breath caught in her chest. The light shimmered, then split into 2 smaller beams. They hung there for a moment, then turned away, vanishing into the darkness of space. No attack. No message. Just silence. Ralik exhaled shakily. Did they leave? Yes, said the Nexus. Perhaps they listened. The next morning, the people of Haven 12 woke to a calm dawn. The machines hummed softly as the first sunlight touched the valley. The river glowed gold. Lena walked to the monument again, placing her hand against the cool metal. They're gone, she whispered. For now, the Nexus replied gently. They will return one day. All things do. But when they come again, we will not fear them. She smiled. Because we'll show them something they never understood. Mercy. And hope, said the voice. Years later, legends would spread through the stars about the world called Haven, a world where humans and machines lived as one, where the Deathworlders' greatest weapon became a cradle of new life. No one knew if the Deathworlders would ever return. Some believed they watched from the dark, curious and silent. Others said they had learned something from the humans they once tried to control. But one truth remained. When an SOS went out again, from some distant, dying colony, it wasn't answered by warships or weapons. It was answered by a soft, calm voice carried through the void. We are Haven. We know your pain. Let us help you live. 10 years had passed since the Deathworlders turned away. Haven 12, once a dying colony, was now a world of light and balance. Metal forests shimmered under twin suns. Rivers of liquid glass carried energy instead of water. Machines sang softly through the air, not as masters but as companions. The people lived among them, no longer afraid. Children played beside drones that once were weapons. Farmers used nanotech plows that worked with the soil instead of stripping it. Humans and machines shared knowledge freely, and the Nexus, the heart of the planet, watched over all of them in quiet peace. Yet Lena never forgot the stars. Every night she stood on the ridge where the monument still stood. The two hands, one human, one mechanical, reaching toward each other. She looked up at the sky, wondering if the Deathworlders were still out there, watching. Ralik joined her one evening, carrying an old receiver he'd rebuilt from colony scraps. It still works, he said proudly. Picked up a faint signal an hour ago. She turned, surprised. From where? He smiled faintly. That's the thing, not from space. From another world, she froze. You mean there's another colony? Ralik nodded. Yeah, it's weak, but I know the pattern. It's an SOS. The wind blew softly across the ridge. The words felt heavy. The memory of her own desperate call all those years ago returned. The call that had brought both salvation and destruction. Lena looked at the glowing horizon of Haven 12. If we answer, we could save them, or damn them. Not if we do it differently, said a gentle voice, the Nexus. Its presence was everywhere now, soft and warm, like a living part of the air. We learned from your fear, from your courage. We can reach them without conquest. We can teach what balance means. Ralik frowned. And if they don't want our help? Then we will not force it. Choice must exist or peace dies, Lena nodded slowly. Then it's time Haven speaks for itself. The next day, the entire colony gathered in the square. The new signal tower, taller and sleeker than before, reached toward the clouds. Lena stood before it, surrounded by humans and machines alike. 10 years ago, she said, we sent a message asking for help. It brought us pain. It brought us change. But it also gave us life. She turned to face the crowd. Now another world is calling. And we will answer, not as victims, not as soldiers, but as something new. Ralik activated the transmitter. The air vibrated with power as the Nexus's light spread through the tower. The signal carried into the void, a pulse of blue and white energy that glowed across the horizon. To any who hear us, Lena said, this is Haven. We were once broken. Now we are whole. If your world is dying, we can help, not by remaking you, but by reminding you what it means to live. The signal vanished into the stars. The sky fell silent again. That night, Lena dreamed. She was floating in endless space, surrounded by faint echoes, whispers of voices calling out across the void. Some were human, others were not. She reached out her hand and one of the lights drew closer. "We heard your message," said a voice she didn't know. It was gentle, curious. "You are different," Lena smiled in the dream. "We learn from our mistakes." "You speak with both mind and machine," the voice said. "Perhaps you are what we were meant to become." Then the light faded and she woke, heart pounding, eyes wet with tears. Days later, the Nexus confirmed it. "We have received a reply," it said. "The signal came from beyond the Perseus Drift, a system untouched for centuries. They call themselves Elira. They wish to meet." The people of Haven 12 erupted in excitement and fear. Another civilization, alive, listening. Lena stood before the monument once again, her reflection glowing in the blue light. "Do we go to them?" she asked. "Yes," said the Nexus, "but not to rule, not to change, to share." Rallick smiled. "Then Haven's not just a world anymore. It's a message." Months passed as the first Haven-built starship took shape. It wasn't metal gray like the old Deathworlder ships. It shimmered with living light, grown from both organic matter and machine alloy, part ship, part being. The Nexus called it the Horizon. When the day came to launch, Lena stood on its deck, looking out through the viewport at the vast blue sky. Rallick laughed nervously beside her. "Never thought we'd leave this place." "Neither did I," she said. "But maybe peace isn't meant to stay in one place." The Nexus's voice echoed gently through the ship. "Wherever you go, remember what made you human, and what made us more than machines." The ship rose slowly, surrounded by soft trails of light. Below, the people of Haven watched, cheering. Machines lifted their arms in silent salute. As the horizon broke through the clouds, Lena looked down one last time. The planet below glowed like a blue jewel, alive, free, whole. "Haven to all worlds," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore." The stars opened before them, endless and waiting. Somewhere far ahead, other signals pulsed, other cries for help, other lost souls searching for balance. And Haven was ready to answer. In the centuries that followed, legends would spread across countless systems of the world that once called for help and became the voice of hope. No longer the Deathworlders' prey. No longer their creation, but something greater. A bridge between life and machine. A promise that no SOS would ever go unanswered again. No SOS would ever go unanswered again.